Hi, guys. Thanks for showing up. You have reached the Nocturnal Feeding with James from Fish Room Fever and me, Chattanooga Ed. And tonight, we're going to be talking moss. But while I get my chat working, will you say hi to everybody?
Absolutely. I'm going to scroll up to the top, but real quick, the last one I saw was from JJ213, or excuse me, 212315 says, subscribed. So glad to have found you guys. So glad that we found you, and thank you, because Ed's an awesome guy. Huge supporter of all the Fish Fam. Goes on a lot of other streams, but never really gets that follow over to his channel. So thank you for that. As far up as I could go, we've got Colette S, Health and Animal Adventures, Brandon N, hello, Fantastic Freak, Sacred Aquatics 2, Pew Fish Zone, Susan for SLC Aquatics, Candy Overhauls, John Larson, Dragon Lair, Sarah J. Sieber, Edgar Reyes, S is here, Anthony's Fishy Friends, Because Beth, hello, going to be lurking again. Once again, I hope you get to feeling better soon, Beth. I got Snacks 13. I need some of those snacks. I need some snacks. Sarah M. Snow, Darlene's Tanks, T-Bones Fishies, Delilah's Critters, 44 Mad Guy Fish and more. Muppet 929, Rico Stan. Again, go check out Rico Stan. I'm sure Ed won't mind if we drop another link in here. He was sponsored one of those giveaways on my channel. So he didn't ask for it. He just wanted to show support, but I want to support him. I'd love to get him to 100 subscribers. We pushed him a little bit in the other stream, but he really was like, no, please, you don't have to do that. So I tried to low-key it. But BJ Palmer, what's up? John Larson, Tim Carter, All in Tanks, Gina French, John McKenzie. I think I got Fantastic Freaks, but we'll see. If I did, hello again. And it's jumped on me. But at the bottom now, Sandy Doty and mainly Bettas. I saw you over there before. Bird Garden, what's up? Hello again. And congrats again on that win, Bird Garden. Fuggin' Fish. Again, that's Fuggin. YouTube, don't be getting mean. Says, like number 50. All right. Yeah, we've got 77 people watching. Get 52 thumbs up. So y'all are awesome. I appreciate that.
That's
hey,
awesome.
Diego at Pet Zotics. Sorry, I know I missed some people like Guppy Shack, but appreciate each and every one of you being here. So even though we are on Ed's channel, I will ask if you'll put at Fish Room Fever. It'll highlight any questions that you have, because as you probably guessed by now, I keep up more with the chat, and Ed kind of runs the awesome show over on this one.
Well, I don't know about that, but we'll do our best. Well, guys, I got into plants like 2 years ago, and I've completely fallen in love with them. I tried doing plants in the 80s and the 90s and whatever 2000s. What's 1 through 10 is, I don't know. Well, nevertheless, I was never successful with plants until the LED started. And now that LEDs are here, I can do plants like crazy. They've just made life so much easier. And so I keep experimenting with different plants. What's the best thing to keep with my fry? Mm-hmm. And I still am going to keep leaning on my go-tos with guppy grass, kabomba. I've got some that I just always love. I've just started some of the pearlweed, but one that I just started getting into, maybe it was 5 months ago, is the mosses. And mosses are so easy. I think I could have probably been doing mosses since the 80s. There's a lot of benefits to them. And what I did was trying to figure out if I wanted to try to use moss. I wrote down different notes, and I'm going to just kind of share some of my notes with you guys and see what you guys think. And we can just kind of share everything. But I found 4 major benefits to the moss. Number 1 is, of course, it cleans the nitrates out of your water, like the plants. That's awesome. But with mosses, a lot of the mosses don't require as much light or as much fertilizer. So there's a major advantage to moss in some ways there. But to clean the water is nice. And then I think it's great for fry. Okay. So number 2 is for fry, not only for the fry to hide, but there's lots of microorganisms that like to live in the moss, because mosses just have tons of weird little shapes and everything for things to grow in. And so you'll always see fish nipping, just like they nip at your sponge filters, because there's lots of little spots for stuff to grow in it grows in the moss like crazy. So I think that's super beneficial towards fry. And James and I, we just met a couple guys like a couple of weeks ago, Prestige Aquatics.
Mm-hmm.
We met them in Kentucky at a fish swap that Mike from Select Pet told us about. And these guys, they sell super beautiful guppies, but all their tanks are just Java moss.
Yeah,
and they're carpeted jungle or Java moss.
Can
It's
I chime in
crazy.
on that?
Yeah, oh, go for it.
So I want to say, seeing their tanks on their videos, which congrats to them. They recently hit 1,000 subscribers. Going and actually looking at their videos, like you said, it's completely matted out with moss. And I have a couple tanks like that. But seeing all of them like that, I am actually going to go through all of my tanks, because some of you may know I don't mind hair algae. I embrace it in a lot of tanks. But I've decided I'm going to go through, and one by one, I'm going to break down all my tanks, get rid of the hair algae so that it's not, intermingled, because anybody that does grow hair algae knows it will get into everything. And I'm going to just start them over from scratch, where I can just have those moss beds in them like that, because it is absolutely amazing when you see dozens of tanks and it's just a wall of moss. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, I won't do it personally because I like looking at different tanks. I like all my tanks different, and it's fun. But as a breeder, I think it's an amazing thing. So, like, I'm just keeping moss now in my guppy nursery, just because that way I can see the fish swimming above. The little things that, the fry that I don't need to see can hide all they want. I think it's awesome too, James.
Absolutely. Sharon Miller was asking what our favorite mosses are. Mine is just your standard Java moss, maybe Christmas moss, but honestly, I like the basic Java moss. I can put it everywhere. I don't have to worry about it, intermingling my different moss types, if you will. But keep in mind, like, even if you look at Aquarium Co-op and they mention, like, their moss bridges and stuff, a lot of times Java moss, you actually are getting like a combination potentially of up to 4 different mosses in there, because some of them are just so easily mingled together and misidentified.
Well, it might make sense though to put a couple different ones in, and I can get to I'm going to go through about 8 of the mosses that I looked at for me, and Java moss is in there, so I'll go into the little details on it. But I could really see it being smart for an Aquarium Co-op to do that, because if you put it, like, Java moss likes light. Yep. So if you've got it under real bright lights, and the Java moss will take over. But let's see. I'm trying to think. Like, I got lots of notes. Weeping moss. It can grow under low lights. There's a lot of that grow under low light. So, yeah, Christmas moss. Maybe they put Christmas moss. So Christmas likes low. So, maybe that way he's improving his odds of keeping a successful sale.
Yeah, well, and that's what the wholesalers, when the wholesalers are growing this stuff for the farms, that's just kind of the way it gets grown. So
pretty smart.
Do you want me to wait for questions till after you get through your list, or do you want me to grab them as they pop up? Because I don't want to be interrupting you.
Let's just go through the top 4 benefits, and then we'll go to the next thing. And we'll any other benefits we'll talk about that. So a third thing that I love is moss is great for egg scatterers. Your fish that like to drop eggs, like your rice fish or tetras, they'll drop eggs on it. Marks. Now there's 2 marks, and they might even both have like Irish accents. It's the one that lives in the UK that does lots of tetra breeding. I was watching how he did it, and he was using moss to collect the eggs. And so once they drop their eggs, he pulls the moss and puts it in a different tank, or he might pull the fish. But the idea is for them to drop the eggs on the moss. And so I thought that was pretty awesome.
Very cool.
And then the 4th one is it just looks cool. So we kind of talked about it looking cool in the very first step, probably. But I mean, you guys probably know a lot, have a lot of other ideas but those were just different things that I thought were easy. I think they're a little easier than plants in some ways, that you don't have as much like die off. Like, you're not going to have leaf litter, but with moss, you do have to keep it trimmed back, so it's still work in that aspect, you know.
Well, so what I like to do with my moss is get it in one location that I want it to flow out of, because you mentioned the trimming back. So like I'll take a single moss mat, and if I want to carpet the whole bottom, I'll put it in the middle of the tank and just let it grow outward in all directions from there. Or if I have like the floating moss balls, I'll put it to one side of the tank and let it kind of carpet out from that direction. But it definitely, if you don't want a lot of it, you do have to do some trimming. Not a super fast grow. It's not like your guppy grass, but sorry, I spilled my water all over me. I'm trying to clean up at the moment.
Oh no.
My co-op cup is fine though. That's the important thing.
Okay, well, here's a couple tips that I wanted to write down also, so that I know, like, what am I looking for? Like, how do I keep it alive? And one is to keep it trimmed. It can actually, it's a lot like guppy grass, where it can go crazy and the insides will turn brown and you don't even realize it. And you'll end up having die off, which is bad. So keep it cut so you don't have the brown middles. My second tip is make sure you're anchoring it to something good, like that it needs. James was talking about how, I don't know if he actually said what his mat's made of, but people use the mats for different things. But there's, some mosses that might prefer a rock. There's definitely moss that has to be attached to wood to survive. So you want to make sure that you're getting a moss, because, if you're just in the store, I was just like, this is why I like wrote some of these tips down so I would remember, because if I read it, I don't remember it. I got to write it down. And everything's in these little, like Jello shot things, and with their name on it. I didn't know what I was for sure getting, so I just like bought a couple of everything. So it's nice to know what needs the anchors, and then it's good to know what moss needs what type of light. Like I mentioned earlier that Java moss wants bright light, so you don't want to put that under a giant Anubias plant, because what'll happen is the moss might end up growing faster than the Anubias and taking over the Anubias and killing it. So Priscilla says moss loves iron, by the way.
Yes, I was waiting for Priscilla. Every time we talk mosses, she says, put some easy iron in there.
Well, doggone, easy iron is the one easy thing I don't have. So,
I have it, and I really don't dose it anymore. I had it for my red plants, and I don't really have a lot of red plants, but I know that it's good for the moss, and I need to start dosing it again. But I'm going through a whole rebuilding process with the tanks and setting things up specifically to try and grow plants better, quicker. Not really better, because that would insinuate the quality of the plants is low, but grow them more productively and efficiently.
Well, there's I think I read that there's over 100,000 different mosses in the world.
And we're going to talk about all of them tonight.
Every one of them. No, but I mean, a lot of them are land moss. But there's a moss for every situation. And so temperature, a lot of mosses are very sensitive to temperature. So we'll get into that a little bit. Now, most of the mosses that we're going to be talking about tonight are ones that are going to be ones you can get at your local fish store or online from your fish stores there, your buddies. So they're the more common ones. But still, temperature does play a key. A lot of mosses don't get too hot. And then just like I said about the heat, moss is almost all around the world. Well, there's even moss in Antarctica, so it's everywhere. Is pH. So some like soft water, some like it hard. So those are some of the things that I've got for tips. Now, James, I would consider him more of a moss professional. Well, I'm not. I wouldn't consider myself. I'm like a moss enthusiast. Enthusiast? I don't know. Enthusiast. Gosh, I hate it when I have to speak correctly. But I'm just trying to get into mosses. But James gave me my first pile of moss, and it's doing great. Fishy Dreams sent me 3 different types of mosses. and I love all of them. And since then, I've just been like growing my moss collection. But what were you gonna say, James?
I don't know about moss professional. I will say that my favorite way to do moss is probably going to be one that gets me a lot of heat. And I will disclaimer, I don't do this on the moss that I sell just because some people don't like it. But for me personally, I have a roll of not chicken wire, but it's a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch square. But it's galvanized, and people go, "Oh my God, it's galvanized." I've used that for such a long time on my moss mats for myself for personal use. Shrimp tanks, anything and everything. Never had an issue with using the galvanized, but some people freak out, so that's why I don't do it. But that's kind of the moss grows the best when I mat it that way. It still grows really well on the inert plastic mats that I use. And then I weight them down with aquarium plant weight. But honestly, if I was going to suggest something, give that a try. It really gets the best growth, and it keeps getting really any brown spots like you talked about. But a lot of people freak out. So
now, Dragon Lair brings up a good point. Are moss balls actually algae balls? Or are there moss and algae balls?
Okay, so Marimo moss balls are actually an algae ball. They are not technically a moss ball, even though that's what they're called, is Marimo moss balls, Marimo moss balls. They're actually an algae ball or an algae ball. The moss balls I'm referencing are like what you get at co-op, where it's attached to like a floating ball, or I like to make those myself. You can get them at Petco as well. When I say moss ball, that's what I'm referencing in this particular conversation, is the floating moss balls, where it's moss, either Java or Christmas or whatever, and you've put it around some sort of floating ball and attached it to a weight. But yeah, there are moss balls that are technically an algae.
Okay. I was going to bring that up tonight, so I appreciate you asking. I didn't write down anything about moss balls. One of my friends, she loves moss balls, and on my list, I eliminate, these were all mosses that I thought that I would like. So it might be more, directed towards a guy like me. I don't know. Like, I see Tim Carter saying fish removal fever is Big Ed using CO2. And I don't use any CO2. So if it was a moss, and I know a lot of mosses like CO2, if it says that it's almost required, I left it out. I don't, whenever, it was kind of like in our earlier show, I was talking about plants that I thought melted, and they melted away so much they never came back because I didn't like CO2. Nowadays, I want to just learn the easy stuff first, and then we'll get to the point for
right. All right, I think I've got most of my mess cleaned up. I'm a little soaked, but that's okay. It'll help to cool me down because it's about 80 degrees in here anyways.
Oh, I'm glad the cat finally moved to the chair next to me because she was so hot.
We've got some questions that were up above. You want me to go ahead and grab those?
Sure.
All righty. So we had Guppy Shack said, fish room fever, my mosses are getting infested with algae while the other plants have none. Any ideas? Thanks, guys. So if your moss is getting infected with algae and your other plants are not, I'm looking specifically at where in the tank is it that it's more likely to get algae. Is your moss floating towards the surface, or maybe it's getting more light and that's where the algae is getting in there? Another thing is moss really does like to collect detritus. Like I like to grow a lot of my mosses in my pleco tanks. When I say pleco tanks, I mean there's dozens of plecos in those tanks growing out, or I've got a breeding pair in there. There's lots of fish poo involved. And that moss will get packed with that detritus. So if you're getting a whole lot of nutrients stuck in there, I would assume that would make it easier for algae to kind of get a foothold in there, if you will. I've not had that issue. The only time I have issues with any algae getting in my moss, it's like hair algae, and that's when it's going to get in everything because that's what hair algae does. But the tanks that I have hair algae in, I intentionally put it in there because of all the microorganisms and goodies and stuff, and expect it to kind of take over everything that it touches.
Yeah, moss will generally outperform algae and make it so it can eat more than the algae, so the algae won't take over. But there is cases like with hair algae that'll be rough on it. And I've seen it with my own eyes. The best thing in the world is an American flagfish. It won't eat the moss, but it will pull all the algae right out of that moss. Now, a mono shrimp will, and all shrimp will too, but a mono shrimp are great at it. But that flagfish, amazing at doing that. If you want to go that route, it's just a flagfish is a fin nipper. I mean, they're pretty aggressive. So if you have anything pretty in there, it might destroy it.
Absolutely. We had S said hair algae is free moss. I don't disagree with you. But S had also said, I sometimes lob my moss a root tab. It has a little bit good growth afterwards, but I don't know if it does anything fishworm fever. So I would assume, even though you're not putting it in under the substrate, whatever your substrate is, it's still releasing those same nutrients into the water if you're lobbing it in there. So, I mean, that would make sense to me. That would be kind of similar to, squirting Easy Green in there in the sense that you're adding some nutrients and fertilizers into the water column. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yep, I feed it the Easy Green, but I think if they don't have roots, they have rhizome. So rhizome, moss is a plant, but it's a very simple plant. It doesn't have. It's a step below liverwort, which is a plant that's a very simple plant. But so it pulls its nutrients from all over. So yeah, I think a root tab would just kind of dissolve and it would just suck it out, just like you said, James. But I do want to say one thing that I did read that I thought was interesting. And I've read two different things. And you know how people get Siamese blind foxes and Siamese algae eaters mixed up all the time? I have read several different places where people will say one of those and they rotate which one destroys moss. So I said just try to keep both of them out, because honestly, I mean, I own some Siamese algae eaters, so maybe it'd be worth a test for me to put in there to see if they would eat the moss. But right now I really love my moss. So I don't want to be sacrificing moss. But that's the one fish that you can't do. But like I said, there's moss all around the world. Phoenix moss, they won't eat the Phoenix moss. So I mean, there's always a moss for every situation. It's crazy.
Absolutely. Sabrina Stewart says, Fish with Fever. I have pothos in my tank with Molly Fry as well as Anubias and something else, but I can't remember the name of that plant. It really helps with my nitrate and nitrite levels, also moss balls. Yeah, plants are absolutely wonderful. They are nature's sponge when it comes to nitrate removal. And that's one of the things that I absolutely love about them. I'm not recommending it for new beginners, but once you get some experience in the hobby, having the planted tanks really allows you to kind of go outside that status quo realm of I'm only allowed to have this many fish in here, because you can play with things like nitrate absorption. And of course, we're not taking in size accountability when we're talking about overstocking. We're simply talking about beneficial bacteria, and then of course nitrate removal via plants and all that wonderful stuff. Yes, very good point. And I'm really enjoying pothos as well.
Yeah, well, and this is something with the nitrates, is because the plants are eating the stuff out of the water. I didn't do as many water changes. I was like doing it once every 2 weeks to 3 weeks, because I really pushed back, because I felt, well, the plants are going to take over. And about maybe 5 or 6 months ago, talking to Haley at her house, her plants were just purling like crazy, and she didn't have CO2, and she does regular weekly water changes still, and she's doing it for the plants, not the fish. And I've started doing it, and my plants are purling. So
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
I'm back to the old-fashioned water changes all the time, which I thought was the original reason why I got plants. But you know what? I like my plants happy. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, I did a video on that. Not on YouTube, it was over on TikTok. But why is my plant bubbling? And people really like that, because if you're new to the hobby and you've never seen your plant pearling, which is when little bubbles come out of it, for anybody that's not familiar with that, the first time I saw it, it freaked me out. I'm like, what's going on? And I had to Google it and discover it, because like Ed mentioned, I'd had horrible luck in the past with plants. But I've gotten to the point to where if I cut my air off, my plants will pearl like crazy. Like if I shut the sponge filters off, even without doing a water change, if I just cut the power off, my plants will start pearling like crazy. And I love it. It's one of the coolest things, I think, with planting tanks. Just watch bubble.
yeah, it just makes them happy. So
It does.
It's cool to communicate with your plants.
John Cox has a very good point here. Says, I never trimmed my moss, but pulled chunks off of it to put in other tanks. Absolutely. I am a big fan of, when I mentioned trimming or propagating, like pulling it out versus just going in and snip. You can snip it. You could definitely cut the moss. But I like the more natural look it retains when you pull it apart, like what John Cox is talking about.
Yeah, I haven't had to cut much. I can see that I've got some growing like crazy. That's now that I have just moss in tanks that like lots of light. That's all I give them, and I can tell that I had this much, and now it's this big. Now it's growing to volleyball size when it was a softball size. I have some Christmas moss that was a volunteer in one of my tanks, and it has taken over so much. I really do need to trim that back because it's getting crazy.
So Jeffrey Watts says, my favorite moss piece is a cholla wood I stuffed with subwasser tang. Very, very cool. I love cholla wood. I love playing with mosses and Anubias and all that wonderful stuff. Priscilla MK says iron and potassium equals moss. Bam. Absolutely. People mentioning the rusty nail, old school style. Absolutely. I had some people kind of panic a little bit at one point. I had a coffee can in one of my tanks as a breeding cave, and it's rusting, and I'm like, people used to intentionally add rust to their tanks. It'll be okay. But if you don't know, you don't know. It wasn't highlighted, but I saw something. I'm going to try and find it again here. It was regarding the moss balls. There it is. Molly Abrahamson says, oh, so can a moss ball become too big so it becomes brown in the middle? They can. Now, again, to clarify, Marimo moss balls, no, but that's an algae. If you're talking like actual clumps of legitimate moss, whether it's Christmas or Java or whatnot, they can, because like Ed mentioned, they can't get the light and the nutrients to the center of that mass, and so they can start to brown out. I will say I have found with like the Aquarium Co-op floating moss ball and the Petco floating moss balls and the ones I make, I like to get them strung up to where they're floating almost right at the surface. So as they're growing, the moss ball is here, and all of that new growth kind of comes out and away from it, and it'll go down and it'll go sideways. But that center is still exposed to everything that it needs. And that kind of helps keep it from browning out.
Now, are you doing that with like a ping pong ball or something?
There are a couple different ways to do it. That's a proprietary secret, Ed.
Oh,
no,
sorry.
I'm just kidding. No. There are a couple different methods. I've not found the perfect one. I know Aquarium Co-op has these awesome little balls that they use, and I'm trying to find out where they get them because they're really, really work well. But you've got everything from the styrofoam method, taking a piece of styrofoam and some fishing line or twine, or not really twine, but string or whatever, and weighting it that way. I've not tried the ping pong ball just because I don't know how I would attach it without putting a hole in it, which is going to affect the buoyancy. I mean, I could seal it up in theory, but I still think it's going to be too buoyant that you need like a massive weight on it to hold it down. But that's one of those things that I say, play with different stuff. I've actually taken the plastic crafting mesh that I use and made basically balls out of it, kind of bent it around into a ball and sewn it together, and use those because they're slightly buoyant, but they're not so buoyant that they just want to take off. It's one of those fun things to just kind of play with different things you have around that you can use to make those.
I think I would take the ping pong ball, wrap it in the end of your pantyhose, then tie the pantyhose off, and then you can glue the or tape, or not tape, but string it, or however. I don't know. Maybe someday I'll have fun trying. I'll have to try it sometime just to have fun. But going to the moss ball or the algae balls, you can grow those gigantic as long as you just constantly roll them. You don't let them like turn into because they'll start to flatten out if you never move them. But if you keep rolling it, you can. I've heard that you can get pretty big ones. That might be kind of cool.
Absolutely.
I don't have the patience, but it'd be cool to see a giant moss ball or giant, algae type ball.
John Cox says Easter eggs. That's a good one. We've got 88 people in here and 75 thumbs up. So I want to say a huge thank you. Candy Overholt's reminding everybody to hit the like button. Thank you, Candy. We love this guy, Ed. He does a wonderful job, so we want to support him as much as we can. And if you're hanging out here and somehow you haven't subscribed already, do me a favor. Right down here, right in there on your screen, there's a subscribe button. Click that and click all notifications.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about mosses to start with. Good beginner mosses. And the mosses that Ed likes. And there's probably ones out there that I haven't seen or tried yet. Well, I haven't even tried everything on the list, but these are all things that I want to eventually try. But the Java moss, we talked about it right off the bat. It's the number one moss, I think, in the world. I mean, the temperatures, it can handle between 59 and 86 degrees. That's awesome. And you'll see that temperatures with a lot of other mosses aren't that huge. That's a gigantic range. It loves light. So you can pump a lot of light on it and it'll grow like crazy. It has a huge pH level between 5 and 8. So, I mean, it can handle soft and hard water. The care level's easy. It just don't let it get out of control. So it doesn't, like we said, brown out in the middle.
Yep.
But, I mean, that's kind of that was the notes that I wrote for the moss ball. Or not, for the Java moss. I don't know. I don't know. Do we want to show people what Java moss looks like?
We can. I'm going to grab this real quick.
Sure.
Proficiency says, what's your recommendation on a pleco to cave ratio? So depending upon what type of pleco, my bristle nose, a lot of times I will start them off with 2 caves per male. I use the watering spikes. Let me preface with that. And you get the round ones and you get the octagonal ones. So I usually put one of each of those shapes in there, let them pick, which is almost always the round one. And then I'll just pull the other one out. The more you get in there. So like my snowball plecos, I've got 5 snowball plecos and 1 sultan in this tank right here. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 caves, 2, 3, 4 different shapes. So it just kind of depends. The zebra plecos, there are 5 in there, and I think they've got 17 caves, just because I don't know which ones they're going to prefer. So I've got just about any size and shape cave possible so that I get the best odds of getting them to find a cave they like, so that when they mature, they start to breed out. But for your bristle nose, you can even just put 1 in there. Generally, if you put 1 in there, they're probably going to take to it, whether it's round or square or octagonal. But because I have extras, I usually start with 2. And then once they pick 1, I'll pull the other one out a lot of times. The more you get, the more spaces you want to have, though. So if I had 2 males, I'd probably put 3 caves in there, just so if one gets beat up by the other and kicked out of his home, he's got kind of a free home to go to.
John Cox says that he just keeps his Java moss year-round outside.
Ooh.
It just doesn't grow in the winter. So maybe it only grows at 59 degrees and higher. So that's pretty cool. Java moss is awesome. It's a great one. Well, Here's my next one is the Phoenix moss. Have you ever dealt with Phoenix moss, James?
I have not. Sorry, I'm trying to read questions and you wanted me to pull this up.
Okay.
So let me.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. I'm going to not pause the chat, but I'm going to scroll my chat up so it stops moving. That way we can definitely get back to the questions there. You said Phoenix moss.
Yes. Phoenix moss is, I have never got it yet. It's supposed to be one of the good beginner mosses. It's a slow grower, but it pretty much uses all light sources. So it can be grown under bright and low light. Low light, slower. Brighter light, it'll go a little faster. The pH is hard, though. It likes the harder water, so 7 and up, which is kind of unusual. But, I mean, that's perfect for anybody with live bears. And the temperature is... oh, wait. No, I'm sorry. The pH also can be super low, too. So, I mean, it fits everything. And the temperature can be 72 to 82. So, I just thought it would be a really nice guppy one. And can you just, like, that third one over? I really like how it looks.
I'm picking the shrimp one.
Oh, okay. The shrimp one, that works.
And I will say, I have yet to find a type of moss that, at least Neocaridina shrimp anyways, don't absolutely love. Anytime I throw moss into a tank that's got shrimp, even if they've already got moss in there previously, they will all swarm that new clump of moss. You want this one here?
Yeah, but I mean, we could see any of them.
It's really beautiful moss. I've not even seen it in any, and we've toured a lot of fish stores. I've not come across it anywhere in person to purchase it. Otherwise, I think I would have some.
I know. I really liked it, and that's why it was on my list as probably my second favorite. Now, there's one that I really want if I ever find it, and we'll get to that eventually here. But I don't know. Has anybody used the Phoenix?
I'm going to answer a question real quick.
Yes.
Sabrina was asking about sexing plecos. I guess the bristlenose. So, general rule of thumb, there can be some slight exceptions. But general rule of thumb, if it's got bristles, specifically if it's got bristles coming up like here on its face, you're looking at a boy. I have seen from time to time females that will get the odd little small bristle kind of around the lip. But if you've got a male, and there are 3 different types. I won't digress into the different types of bristlenose that you see, but there are actually a couple of different species of bristlenose commonly available. They're not all the same. But most commonly, you'll see the males will have the bristles around the lip here and then kind of going up there. If you get into the Trimac bristlenose, they kind of more everywhere on the face. But generally speaking, if you're seeing lots of bristles as it matures, it is a boy. Very rare that you get a female that has 1 or 2 bristles, but it is possible.
Okay, I'm going to kill how to pronounce it. Apparently, the Phoenix moss there's 2 types of this moss. It's Physcens.
The Physidens? Yep.
Physidens. Okay.
And what's the other one? I can pull it up.
Well, it's Phoenix is one of them, I guess. I don't know what the other one is. But that's pretty cool. I did know that it's from North America too. So it's pretty neat.
100% agree with Priscilla. Priscilla MK says, I feel like there is different variants of Java moss, and at some point it just all got named Java, at least 5 types. Absolutely. Yep. Very much so.
I agree, because I have 2 different Java mosses from 2 different people, and they look different. So.
And then Brad was following up asking about if you could cut a Marimo moss ball in half. Yes, you can. Again, that's not technically a moss, it's an algae. But that is one of my favorite things to aquascape with, is to take a Marimo moss ball and open it up. And then you can glue it onto plants, or not plants, but onto wood, onto rock. I've actually taken pieces of slate and just taken the ball and opened them up and made that slate just an entire wall of it, and it will still continue to grow. But yeah, you can definitely do that if you want to.
James has made a couple of videos also on that. So if you guys want to learn more about that, check that out on Fish Room Fever.
Thank you, Ed.
Yep. I don't know. Do you know what the video is called?
No.
Okay.
No, I honestly don't.
It was about 5 months ago, I would guess.
I have so many older videos that like never got watched that it's hard to keep track of. I have some that we talk about the stuff a lot, and I think if people saw it, it would take off. But the videos that have like 50 views because it's when I just first started. So, not a lot of view stuff. But I may go back and update some of those for you all. Bird Garden was saying, where did it go? We have Physidens in the cold water rivers around here. Very hardy. Sounds like we need to go up there to Rack Bird Garden.
Yeah, that'd be
Find
awesome.
us some Physidens.
Except I don't know if he does streams and rivers anymore. I think he's done with them.
Right.
I think he's gardens and ponds now.
And Priscilla saying, I've got 2 types of Physidens, including Phoenix. Swiss Aquatics, go check her out. And you all that were hanging out in KG Tropicals earlier heard mention of her calendar. Priscilla, are you still doing some more pre-orders for round 2 on that calendar? I know we talked about it on your stream Monday, where I am getting to co-host. Priscilla's got an amazing fish art calendar. If any of you were not familiar with it, I would encourage you to check out Swiss Aquatics, and we'll get a link in here. Her art is absolutely gorgeous. Sorry.
Yeah.
I had to get that out there.
Rena asked if goldfish will eat the moss, and goldfish will pretty much eat everything. It's yeah. They like to, if it fits in their mouth somehow, they'll get it in there, and if it doesn't fit, they'll just try still shoving it in.
Right.
Well, here's a cool plant or a cool moss that I already have, but it's the Christmas moss. I think it looks super pretty, and I've got it in 2 different tanks. One's growing out of some dragon wood or dragon rock that's just crazy. That was a volunteer, and then Fishy Dreams gave me some. And it's really cool, but I didn't know this. It is the best moss that I read and could find for carpet growing. So it's like the #1 that I could find listed as the best carpet grower. It also grows under low light, which is nice too.
Yeah, it doesn't grow out quite as stringy as like your Java moss does per se.
It doesn't like pH over 7.5 though, so it'll start to die off with the really hard pHs. And the temperatures are 68 to 82, so it's a guppy ranger for me. So that's why it's probably, unfortunately, all this stuff is probably going to be geared to guppies. I'm sorry, guys.
But there are a lot of other fish that work within those parameters, though.
Yeah, and what I did was when I was writing my notes down for when I go to a store and see something, or when I have the opportunity to get something, I wanted to know what it's best about. So that's why I wrote on a sidebar, this is the best carpeting one. There might be better carpeting ones, but this one's known for being a really good carpet plant, or carpet moss, right? But do you have much experience with the
I haven't really done much with Christmas moss. So here's the thing, and we've kind of touched slightly on this. A lot of times mosses are misidentified. So you might get something that, there's some Christmas moss. Well, no, that was actually Java moss, and I've had that happen before. And I'm okay with that because the moss is a moss is a moss, and I love them all. But I've not really done much with Christmas. I like my Java moss. It grows so amazingly well for me that I haven't really branched out. Now, if I were to come across some, when we were at that event, the guy was like, here's a big old bag of Java moss. If that had been, hey, here's a big old bag of Christmas moss, of course, I still would have jumped all over that. And I'd probably be growing it out somewhere separate to keep them from getting mixed in together. It's very beautiful. I love the pictures of it. But I really I prefer the Java because it does get a little bit stringier versus matting, which I find is better for the fry. It gives them more coverage areas. But it's definitely beautiful.
this is thicker. And if you like look at, there's no zoom in, but it almost looks like an evergreen type branch. You know, how it's just little chunks are coming out. And I think that's where it got its name Christmas, because the evergreen pine type branches that, you know, come out of it. But yep, I really like it. I like it. But like James said, it might be more of for a show tank even too. Okay, now this is the only moss that I found that I kind of liked for growing on wood. And it's the flame moss. And it requires, well, from what I read, it requires wood. So this is one that you don't want to just drop and float. It wants to attach its rhizome to a wood surface. And again, it's another guppy temperature, 68 to 82. It has the same pH as the Christmas moss, so it doesn't like to have it super hard. But the flame moss, well, that flame moss doesn't look like it's attached to too much wood. It looks like it's
Honestly,
mats.
well, yeah, I would probably mat that attached to wood, especially if you specifically want it on a wooden aquascape. But in terms of propagation, just growth, I would probably mat it on the plastic that I use from the Christian.
It's called flame moss because the little leaves kind of, or I don't know what we should be calling them, but the branches kind of go upwards like a flame. And a lot of people like that look to it. You know, how it's where the weeping will all kind of like be like a weeping willow, all dropping. This one's going straight up. And there's one with the stick on the side, on the far side there. But I guess from what I read was this the best for wood. Okay.
It's really pretty stuff. Yeah, and there you can see they've just got it on some really thin mats.
Oh, yeah. I've got to the weeping moss I bought for my bonsai tree. I did a video on it. It was immersed grown yeah. Well, it never came around. I think it was burned out before I got it, and so I'm gonna have to peel it off. And I'm gonna try to get the flame moss to put on the bonsai tree because I think that'll be pretty.
Shameless self-promotion here. BJ Palmer says, I'm loving my Java moss I got from James. It's beautiful. I'm glad to hear it, BJ Palmer, and thank you for the order. Mr. Fisher was asking, have you ever had to rescue a fish from Java moss? I have, and said to myself, time to thin the moss, LOL. I have not really had to do it with the Java moss. I have had to do it with guppy grass because that stuff grows so quickly and so thick. I turn around one day and it's like, wow, the fish have like nowhere to swim and they're getting tangled up in the guppy grass. It's definitely one of those things. You're like, yep, time to thin it down, like you said. John Cox was asking, would cocoa mat material make a good mat for flame moss? As long as what you're using is aquarium safe, absolutely. I know there's some different types of mattings and things and that type of stuff. Like the coconut husk, just make sure that it's aquarium safe, and I think that would be a good one.
Yeah, I've got weeping grass or weeping moss on my coconut husk, and it's doing really well.
So Molly Abrahamson is asking, where do you recommend buying these types of mosses online? So,
well, that's
that is a good one. There are a lot of phenomenal online retailers. I can think of at least 6 off the top of my head. I know Priscilla MK at Swiss Aquatics mentioned she has got a couple different kinds of mosses. Hey, How to Garden, how are you? I do carry Java moss myself on the Fish from Fever website. And then you've got places like Aquarium Co-op is a wonderful source for plants. Diego Petzotic / Multiple Aquariums. If you go to multipleaquariums.com, lrbaquatics.com, like Chevy Fish just said, there are a lot of really, really good hobbyists that you can find here on YouTube that are self-growing and propagating. So I always recommend that.
Get Gills. You can go and
get Gills. I mean, there are so many. I hate to
Yeah,
I'm
we're
gonna
not going to
miss
say
some.
tuna luck,
Yeah,
but
I'm gonna.
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I know I'm gonna miss some, but if you hang around the fish fam long enough, you'll find all the cool places to get the good stuff.
Yeah, and if there's one particular thing you can't find, there's aquabed. Now, aquabed is a little different than all those other ones we were saying because there's a lot of people that we just don't know, but some of them have got like huge, like thousands of people have bought plants from them. Like I bought some plants from a guy and he was wonderful. He had over 1,000 perfect reviews. So, it's hard for a new guy to get on Aquabid and start selling stuff because if you see only has like 5 reviews, you might be afraid that he's a con artist, But
Right.
he's got 500 plus and they're all good. Read them so they're not all from the same guy. But you can find rare stuff on Aquabid also.
You can. I think that might be a good thing to add to the Fish Room Fever website potentially. It would almost be going against the business side of it, but I think for community wise, it would be helpful. And I don't care one bit to send people over to other places, but I almost think that would be a good idea to add a list of some of the wonderful fish fan people we have that have stores.
Yeah.
So
really
we'll look into doing that. I'll get with Streetwise and see what we can come up with on adding that to the website. Because there are so many good sources for plants and fish and shrimp and all that just within the fish fam community here on YouTube.
Really, there is. Black Label says that there's Etsy even now has moss and floaters.
They do, yes. Etsy has got a lot of aquatic plants. The thing you need to be aware of on Etsy, I've found you can run into a lot of loopholes and caveats when trying to buy plants on there. And the portions and prices don't seem to be comparable. Thank you, BJ Palmer, to like what you find within the YouTube community. So like one lady that I follow on TikTok, I saw where she's got an Etsy store. So I want to go check out and just see what she's doing. Cause she's like, hey, I've got frog bit in stock. Well, she's selling like maybe 5 leaves of it, 5 of the little plants of it for like $4, $5. Okay. And then there's the thing you have to click yes in order to order. And that's your confirmation. By clicking yes, you agree that you understand that your order may contain pest snails and duckweed. So just things to keep in mind. If you're new to ordering stuff, look for things like that. If you don't mind pest snails and duckweed, that's great. If you're somebody that wants, pure frog bit. So I'm one of those people that, and this is not a sales pitch, I don't even have frog bit in stock at the moment, but I'm one of those people that I believe in bringing value, regardless of if we're just talking to you with information, entertainment, or if I'm selling you a product. I want you to get value. So my frog bit, when I pack it up, that is the thing that takes me the longest to do, because I go through every single frog bit that I pull out. If it's got a leaf that maybe has one little imperfection, I cut it because I want it all to look picture perfect. I want you to be able to put that in an aquascape that you're doing tomorrow and putting in a competition. I make sure there's not a single snail on it. I make sure there's not a single piece of duckweed on it. It goes through a 4-stage rinsing, cleaning, and pruning process before I package it. So that's just, something to be aware of.
Yep. And I'm going to give James a whole tote of it because I throw it out in my garden for fertilizer.
Yeah.
I'm terrible.
And that's one of the reasons I'm able to send these massive portions. Like I've gotten a couple people that have gotten it and they're like, oh, wow, I didn't expect that to be a portion. That's why I ordered, 2 or 3. I'm like, no, we're going to hook you up on it to the extent that I no longer have any of my own personal frog bit, but we're going to take care of people.
That's awesome.
Zen, I posted your channel because you're an amazing moderator. You're constantly putting in work every time I turn around. And I think a lot of people don't realize that you do make videos from time to time.
High quality videos.
Yes. And she's always happy when she gets some new subscribers. I'll get a message from her. I'll be like, look, I hit X amount of subscribers. And I'm like, that's awesome. Congratulations. Maybe if we actually promoted your channel a little bit from time to time, you get some more. So that's why I put it in there, Zen, because we appreciate what you do. And there's no reason we can't help you choose some subscribers. while we're talking about awesome fish people.
I wish I had her skills. I would be well, not a superstar, but I'd have a Brazilian more than I have because she is so good. But okay, let's go back to the moss. And this is the moss that I really want. And I haven't seen it. And it's a low light moss that is incredible. I think it's the coolest moss of the moss. The star moss. Have you seen star moss?
I have, not in person, but I have seen it like online, glancing through. Let's pull this up here for the people.
Ever see it at a swap, or James, if you see it at a swap, you let me know.
Absolutely.
Unless you buy it, but I promise I won't take it out of your hands. But yeah, I don't know if you can zoom in. Like, how about that second one down, or the second row, second shot, because it's kind of zoomed in. At the top of each of them kind of looks like a little star. It's so neat.
It is really awesome. I do want to say Dave's aquarium thoughts. I didn't realize you had pushed up your time. I'm sorry we're eating in on yours a little bit.
Oh,
I'm used to you going an hour after we end.
Holy cow. I didn't even realize what time it was. Oh, what time does Dave start?
He's got it scheduled for right now.
Okay. Well, guys, why don't we we'll talk moss next week. we'll because I've just touched, like, I've only gone through like a third or 1/3 of my moss talk. So
Dave says, no worries, take your time.
Well,
Dave,
let's just finish up on this star one, and we won't go any farther because I got a bunch more moss that I'd like.
He's saying, no, just continue if you want. So we'll leave it to Ed. Definitely going to go hang out with Dave.
Well, let's just finish this one moss out. And I don't know if anybody else has ever had it. I'd love to hear people's thoughts on the star moss. It can handle really warm water. You can go up to 86 degrees. So, like, it would probably be perfect if you had rams or something. That'd be pretty neat. It grows slow, but it's easy. So I think it's kind of like corals. You know, if it's a coral that's got a lot to it, they kind of grow slower. It does that whole little thing at the top, so it's just a slower grower, but it's a low light also. So if you had a canopy or lots of larger plants on top, you could have a little bush or two of these on the sides. That would look so sharp.
You're really making me want to go find some of these mosses now. I'm gonna have to talk to my LFS. I know that he's willing to get stuff in, so I'm gonna have to ask him about some of these mosses.
We just don't want them out of those little plastic Jello shot things.
Yeah.
I've had only one Jello shot live, and they're super expensive. I just don't think the Jello shots are worth it. And I'm sorry to all the LEX or local fish stores, because I know that they're probably great profit. And I mean, I love Aquatic Aesthetics. That's mine. I've bought a lot of moss from him that are on pads and things. So my personal opinion is I'm going to stay away from shot glass or the Jello shots.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What we should do is try to get moss. Both of us should try to get like a escape tank and try to put a moss or two in there.
I like that. I like that. Just a quick response. Somebody asked if anybody knew anything about Aquatic Arts or had experience with them. I've not actually ordered online from them, but Ed and I did get to go, tour their facility when we did one of the Circle City Aquarium Club swaps / meetups at their facility, hosted by them. They've got an awesome setup. Haley at All Ball Aquatics works there, and got really cool fish. I've not ordered anything online to get anything shipped. I've bought some stuff from them in person, but I would assume their shipping is up to par, given that Haley's working there. I couldn't picture Haley working somewhere that was a crappy fish place,
Yeah, she just pushes too hard. I have a $75 gift card to them that I lost. So, oh well. But, well, let's stop it here. We'll talk moss next week. We still got a bunch of moss to go. And we'll talk about how to attach things to different things and we'll get a little bit more into moss, or more, not more into, but we'll just talk a little more moss next week. Thank you everybody for coming. Thank you, Mod. You guys are crazy good. You guys just do so much work, and I appreciate it so much. James, I really appreciate it. You're an awesome guy. So much fun. Love doing everything. Just having fun. You're my fish buddy, man.
Absolutely. You're my best friend, buddy. I appreciate you. I love all you guys out there. Thank you so much. We got this guy. Oop, I've swapped over to Dave's here. We're to go 78 watching and 85 thumbs up. So you all are amazing. Thank you for supporting Chattanooga Ed. And thank you all for hanging out with us in the stream before this on my channel. I'm just going to leave it with thank you and I love you, and turn it over to the boss man for his sign out.
Yep. Well, actually, before the sign out, I do want to say a few more things because I consider it work. My other jobs. I don't get paid. I'm just doing it for fun. But I want to give a shout out to all the shows that I co-host because I'm trying to help them grow by being there. And so I think I ought to shout them out. Tomorrow is the Lefty Show at 4:15. We talk about anything and everything. It's crazy. You can ask us fish questions, movie questions, game questions, you name it. We'll try to answer it. And then on Saturday, I'm on with James again with the Fish Room Fever Saturday Night Live at 7:30 to 9 o'clock. And we're always doing something different there. Then occasionally I'm with Bob Kaler on Sunday nights, and we have a good time talking about his awesome fish house and whatever you guys want to talk about. Then I'm with Diego on Tuesdays, and he's Petzotics, multiple aquariums. He's a super great guy, helps the community, volunteers, and donates stuff to every contest. He helps everybody. He's just a wonderful guy. And so I appreciate y'all, and thank you.
Here we go. Let's go find out how to smartify your aquarium with Dave's Aquarium Thoughts starting right now.